Alright, so Batman, the Flash, and Orion walk into a supervillain bar. I know, this sounds like the setup to a joke, but it's actually an episode of Justice League Unlimited called Flash and Substance. And when I watch this episode, the way the Flash deals with his enemies is very interesting, and I walk away from this episode with 3 theological takeaways. While we dive into that, what is your favorite DC animated TV show or favorite DC animated movie? Let's talk about that in the comments. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk theological review for Flash and Substance, which is an episode of Justice League Unlimited, which I'm going to be honest, this is one of the DC animated series that I didn't watch too much growing up. I watched Batman the animated series pretty well, Superman the animated series, but for some reason, I think because this was around my college years, I missed this one a little bit, and I was more watching Smallville at the time. Nonetheless, I'm glad for the opportunity to dive into this now, and this opportunity comes from my patron, the Crazy Hedgehog Lady. So thank you so much for supporting Durbania and giving at that level where you get to pick a theological analysis for me to do. That means a lot to me that you would support me and that you would even support me at that level. And thank you for suggesting this. Seeing as how I'm not super familiar with this show, it was incredibly cool to dive into this episode, and for me, I thought this was a pretty cool starting place because this was a side of the Flash that I don't think I've seen too much. I always knew the Flash was kind of a more happy, joyous character, but to actually watch this episode and see in depth the Flash go through his day and how he deals with his enemies was in fact pretty inspiring. Something else cool about this episode is Michael Rosenbaum does the voice of the Flash. So to see Michael Rosenbaum go from this,
I am the villain of the story,
to this,
Okay, you guys are so slow.
is actually pretty great for me. Takeaway number 1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So the context of this episode is this. You have these villains of the Flash, they're at a supervillain bar, and they're sitting at this table whining and complaining about how the Flash always ruins their plans. And now, the city is going to honor the Flash. They're going to give him a key to the city, and they're going to open the Flash Museum all in his honor. So this should be a great day for the Flash. So they're all deciding they're going to get together and kill the Flash on this day, so he will stop interrupting their plans. And so they put this plan into motion, and lots of crazy things happen. I mean, you got Mirror Master, who uses lasers from a disco ball to try to kill the Flash. Captain Boomerang tries to use a giant boomerang. Where do supervillains get the money for these things and to just pull these things out of nowhere so fast? That's the wrong question to be asking in an episode like this. The point is Captain Boomerang hits the Flash with a gigantic boomerang, and the Flash defeats it. And the Trickster comes up with a cool plan, which is really quite dumb.
Firstly, I get 400 cases of fake dog vomit. I grease the bottoms of them, and when the Flash runs into them, the whole mess slides into a wall of metal spikes.
And the other villains think is quite dumb, so they kind of dump the Trickster out of their group, and he goes to drink alone at this bar, feeling sad and lonely, because here he was belonging to this group. You know, he's a villain of the Flash too. They all had that in common, and now he got to be part of this. And so Batman, Orion, and the Flash, they go to this villain bar to get information out of the Trickster. What is the plan of these villains? Where is the next place they're going to strike, and how are they going to strike? And so as Batman and Orion are stepping up to the Trickster, and they're going to get the information out of him, and you know exactly how they're going to get the information out of him, right?
I swear to God. Swear to me!
Yeah, it's gonna be that way, and it's gonna be intense. But right before it starts, the Flash stops them. Because you see, especially Orion in this scene, what they're thinking about is getting the villains and bringing them to justice. They're not so concerned about the means. So yeah, beating the information out of the Trickster, they don't care where that's gonna leave the Trickster's heart. Oh, who cares about such a thing? They don't care where that's gonna leave him. They just need to bring these bad guys to justice. But the Flash doesn't just care about bringing the bad guys to justice, he also cares about the state of their heart. So he stops this, and he sits down at the bar with the Trickster and just starts talking to him.
Here's the deal, buddy. Tell me where those guys went, and I promise to come see you in the hospital. We'll play darts. The soft kind.
Okay. They're gonna ambush you at the Flash Museum.
And what's amazing is this really gets through to him. And so to me, this illustrates that verse in Proverbs 15:1 that says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh one stirs up anger. Let's talk real life now, where I've worked with people that drove me nuts, where I've had bosses that drove me nuts. And to be honest, I haven't always succeeded in this. Some of those bosses and some of those coworkers brought out the worst in me instead of the best in me. But Jesus wants it to bring the best out of us. Jesus says this, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Now, that doesn't mean be a doormat and be walked over. It doesn't mean that at all. In fact, the Flash wasn't that. The Flash got the answers he needed. The Flash brought the bad guys to justice. He was nobody's doormat. But there was no malice, there was no vengeance in his heart, and he didn't come at the trickster with that anger. In fact, he came at that trickster realizing the trickster is fighting his own battles. And so when he realized that and he showed that mercy and compassion to the trickster, suddenly the trickster had no walls of defense up. He just said, all right, fine, you want to play darts with me? Cool. The bad guys are going to do this. They're going to jump you at the Flash Museum when they do the grand opening. So just be prepared for that. And so what we see is a soft answer turned away wrath. And by the Flash actually caring about the trickster and caring about his state, it actually brought some healing even to the trickster. So when Jesus says, pray for your enemies, no, he's not saying be a doormat. But he's also saying, don't let anger and malice be in your heart. I've had opportunities with those annoying coworkers to find those times to talk with them and to find those times where they've been most annoying to me are those times where they've been dealing with the greatest battles in their life. And so when I can actually take time and show them compassion, it opens the door to communication. Funny how that works. Takeaway number 2, the Flash does not walk in fear. To me, this was an incredibly interesting aspect of this episode. I mean, you already had Mirror Master try to kill him, Captain Boomerang try to kill him, Batman has done some detective work and found out it's more than just them that are out to kill the Flash, and the plan to kill him is imminent. But in the midst of that, the Flash did not let that fear hold him back, and he did not let fear keep him from living his life. The other thing that's interesting is he wasn't an idiot about this either.
Take these attempts on your life more seriously. That's 4 super criminals with an axe to grind.
So they walked in wisdom, not stupidity. The Flash wasn't belligerent and dumb about it, but he also didn't surrender his life to fear and live in that prison, but he was walking in faith, and in fact, he had this joy in spite of some of the fearful circumstances around him.
Cool, huh?
For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Something else the Bible says is that the devil is like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. So the devil walks around trying to devour us. That is his goal. But we don't have to actually live in fear of the devil, because greater is he who is in us than he who is in the world. So when we live our lives surrendered to God and we resist the devil, then he will flee from us. So in life, we don't have to walk in prison surrendered to fear, but when we walk with faith and wisdom, firmly rooted in the word, firmly rooted in God's promises, then we stand on that firm foundation with his power and love and a sound mind.
Flash, what about the new museum? It got destroyed in the battle, and it was our biggest shrine to you.
What I like about that is that wording. That the city wanted to say thank you to the Flash by building this museum as a shrine. Did you catch that word? As a shrine. He's not a god. He's a metahuman, but he ain't no god worthy of worship. And he knows this about himself. In fact, he laughs it off. He's like, hey, at least I got to be on TV. He wasn't looking to please man. Yes, he was incredibly grateful that the city was saying thank you by giving him the key to the city and building that museum. Of course he thought it was cool, but he didn't live seeking their approval. He didn't live for that museum to be built. So when it was destroyed, it didn't bother him like that because he was grateful that this city was grateful, but he wasn't living for their approval. Then he walks over to Batman and Orion's an interesting dude because he says this.
Now I understand. You play the fool to hide a warrior's pain.
I mean, that's kind of rude, but then the Flash responds.
Dude, bad guys went down and nobody got hurt. You know what I call that? A really good day.
And what's interesting about that response is the Flash isn't living for Orion's approval or for Batman's approval. He doesn't care if Orion sees him as foolish because, he's full of joy and he lives full of joy. His biggest thing was, no, we fought the good fight today. And we brought the bad guys to justice with nobody getting hurt. That was the most important thing to him. So he wants to live his life and live his mission, bringing the bad guys to justice and protecting the weak and the innocent. That's what he wants to live his life doing, but he doesn't do it for the approval of man or for the approval of, the other heroes. Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. And you know what? That's exactly where I want to be. To live for the praise of man is this horrible, dangerous roller coaster, right? It's up and it's down. And when it's up, you're up with it, and it's like, yeah! And then as soon as it's down, dang, you're down. But God is a firm foundation. And when we define ourselves by what He says about us, and what He says is unchangeable, His love for us is unconditional. So when we live to bring Him honor in our lives, and when we live and humble ourselves under His mighty hand, man, that's where we find that firm, unshakable foundation. So what did you think of Justice League Unlimited? And have you seen this particular episode, Flash and Substance? What did you think of it? I want to say a huge thank you again to my patron, that crazy hedgehog lady. Thank you so much for pointing out this episode to me and pointing out what you liked about this episode, because even she says she loved how the Flash dealt with his enemies. So thank you so much for pointing that out to me. That means a lot to me, that you would watch and support and that you want to just take part in this content like that. So thank you so much for that. It means so much to me. And if you want to check out my Patreon page and maybe become a patron of Durbania, I have the link to that in the description below. And while you're there, be sure to hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian, and hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.